The day that you were diagnosed with lymphedema, tell me about that moment where you found it out and how it impacted you.
So the day that I found out wasn't as bad as the journey leading up to that. Because I think now that I've gotten over the fact that my leg isn't being amputated, I still had to deal with the fact that I have a condition that I'm told is incurable.
Steve Jobs, he was so one-dimensional at work. But it's only after he died that we found out how bad his relationships were. Being so one-dimensional, so invested in his project, is what helped Apple become what it was.
Yeah. Whether it's religious or not, faith is believing in something with a strong conviction, whether you've seen it manifest or not, right? For me, as soon as I established my faith and understood what my faith meant for me, was the very beginning of me understanding who I am.
Bahumi, today we're diving into, I would like to know the first time that you remember a headline or a comment reducing you just to your appearance.
Dang. Things I've been reduced to a number of things. Being reduced to my appearance is I feel like it was just an add-on to all the things that I've been reduced to. The first time I remember being reduced was when I was being reduced to just being like my parents' child, for example, right? Because my parents are also in the media industry. A part of me feels like that definitely felt worse.
Why is that?
I don't know. I guess you feel like your only purpose here on earth, when that happens, you feel like your only purpose here on earth is like as a position, like you are someone, something. You don't have a name, you don't have much to offer. And it's pretty tough to prove that you've got something to offer when the people that you're being compared to have offered so much. And then coincidentally, then I guess coming back to your question, the time that I was reduced to my appearance was during my father's wedding, which was publicized.
Was that public? So just, I'm not in the loop. Was that publicized on purpose, or was that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So there was like a special, and I think it was like a 3 or 4 part special where they were showing his wedding. So it was a pretty big deal. And when I appeared on there, it's funny because I was around like my happiest time, but I had just come back from a fast, and I'm a pretty small person, so you can imagine post fast, I'm like way tinier. But I was very happy, and in the moment, I was happy for his happiness as well. And I walked down the aisle. In fact, I remember when we were thinking about my dress and the outfit, I specifically asked the designer to make sure that my arms are covered because, I didn't want people commenting on. And then she didn't follow suit. And I walked down the aisle and I looked visibly skinnier. And, the comments, which is like people just went wild, just coming at how skinny I am. And like, it was like mean comments. So it wasn't even just like out of concern or whatever. It was things that, yeah, people were just, I don't even think I want to repeat some of them, but yeah, people were just really mean. I guess, again, it was just like an add-on to, just feeling reduced to just being made to feel like there's nothing else that people see in me other than whose I am and what I look like. So yeah, that was pretty crap.
How do you feel about that now?
Oh, it's still a trigger, and I think that's why I find difficulty speaking about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that I'm still working through. Among my list of things to unpack with my therapist is not the highest. There's maybe that's I'm still working through it, but it's definitely still a trigger. Look, I think it's one of the things that I find that people rarely discuss is just the process in healing and getting over things or getting through things. It's very easy to jump straight to the end, hopeful result of, yeah, but don't care what people think about you, and you are beautiful the way that you are, and I'm a spiritual person, so God loves you just the way you are, and all of that stuff, and it's great, and sure those are all true, but are they reality for me at this point? No, and I think I'm still undergoing just getting over that, and I think that happens through me learning probably other aspects of myself, and appreciating them a bit more. So that all the other things that people say are wrong about me aren't so significant. And perhaps in so doing, I'll be able to really appreciate those things as well, and maybe see the good in them by not focusing on how bad they are. But right now, it's still pretty tough to not focus on how people say they're bad, you know?
So I guess the day that you were diagnosed with lymphedema, that exacerbated that problem quite a bit.
Heck yeah.
So tell me about that time. Where were you? You don't say the specific doctor, but like, tell me about that moment where you found it out and how it impacted you.
So this was in high school. I was in grade 8. So I was 14 years old. I'm 13 now. I remember, I think I was playing soccer or something. This part I'm going to skim through. But I was playing a game and I kicked a brick because clearly I can't play any sports of any kind. And then I got injured and we didn't think it was that deep, but a few days went by and the pain, remained, and there was a bit of swelling on my ankle. Eventually went to a physio did her thing, and then the swelling just kind of decreased a little bit, right? But I think it never really went back to what it was, but this was just on my ankle. And then it was such a gradual shift that when I started telling my parents, yo, I think my leg is bigger, the other one, they were like, no, it's not, you're being dramatic. I'm like, no. And of course I know my own body.
Yeah.
So I'm like, no, it's definitely bigger. It just wasn't significantly big. I'm like, I can see this is a weird,
Yeah, you just tell something isn't right.
Yeah. And they were just like, no, you're being dramatic. And so I think it was about maybe 6 months later where they could actually see a significant difference. So it was a very, very gradual, I guess, growing process. And then eventually you started seeing doctors. And doctors didn't know what it was. In fact, some of them just said, it will go down, don't worry. Maybe it's just just triggered by this recent injury, etc. And it was only a year later that we got a diagnosis. So I was going back and forth trying to see, because within this year now it was like significantly bigger. And we were worried that it was just going to keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And they didn't know what was making it big. And then I found out at a hospital, at a public hospital, funny enough, because I've been to 5 million private hospitals and they couldn't tell me what the issue was. And it's actually quite interesting. The journey to me finding out was tougher than the day that I actually found out. Because I think on the day I actually found out, I was relieved that I knew what it was. And I was relieved that they didn't have to amputate it. I think that was just, I was panicking until that time. I'm actually not feeling a little emotional just thinking about it. You ask me questions I've never processed. Now that I think about it, it's pretty interesting. Yeah, I know. I don't ask myself this stuff, and I know they're simple, but yeah. So the day that I found out, it was just again maybe just the focus thing, right? Because I'm focused so much on not losing my leg that hearing that I have lymphedema was like, oh, okay, so we're good, so everything is fine. Yeah. So finding out wasn't as bad as the journey leading up to that. And of course, it wasn't as bad as now having to live with it. Because I think now that I've gotten over the fact that my leg is being amputated, I still had to deal with the fact that I have a condition that I'm told is incurable. And I was like 15 at the time, which sucked because, I couldn't, not that I couldn't, I could, but my esteem wouldn't allow me to participate in certain things at school. And things like netball, for example, I took a while before I actually started participating in it because I didn't want, the shame. I would hide a lot. I would wear dresses with jeans. People really question my fashion sense, and I'd rather have them question my fashion sense than have them question my leg.
So for people who don't know, what is lymphedema and how does it manifest?
Lymphedema, well, I was diagnosed with what they call lymphedema precox, meaning that it happened, apparently it was bound to happen, but it just happened before it was meant to, and the injury may have triggered it, right? And it's essentially a swelling of some area of your body. For me, it was my right leg, and it's pretty much caused by it's a venal issue. Either your lymph nodes aren't working properly, or they're blocked, or there's just there's just an issue within your veins that causes a lot of excess fluids to pretty much remain instead of flow to the nodes, and then because they're there, pretty much then spills out into that area, and it just remains there. And so the longer it stays there, the harder it becomes, and sometimes it can even become like a gel if you don't, do enough massages, exercises, things like that. So yeah, that's pretty much the condition. They say it's incurable. It's just something that you have to manage. It's very painful from time to time.
What does the pain feel like?
It feels like there's something on you, like a heavy weight on you. And then if you like maybe try to get up, it still follows you. Yeah, it's tough to move your joints. It just feels very stiff.
Would you say it's painful? As in painful in the sense that, if you get a laceration, it's like a shooting pain, or is it like a pulsating pain, or is it more like a really uncomfortable feeling that kind of ferments into what that pain might look like as just discomfort?
I think it starts off as discomfort. So you're first really uncomfortable, and if you don't do something about it, it starts to feel like pain. So again, maybe if someone or something is on your lap and it's heavy, it's first uncomfortable. And then after a while, it's like, okay, this is really sore. Now it's pressing in on this area. And so you have to do something about it, remove it. So
I think that's a really good example of me trying to understand how what that might feel like.
yeah.
Now, this obviously, a year is a long time to deal with something and not knowing what that is. At this time, I'm sure your parents are trying to figure out, or help and figure out, you're going to all these different clinics. What did that support look like from the parents?
I think so. They really tried their hardest in trying to find different doctors and help, etc. It's a very tough thing to really explain, and I think it's because my parents tried what I'd like to believe their hardest to figure out what the problem was, but because it's not something that seems as tragic or fatal as an illness that we know you only have maybe like 2 months to sort it out before something really detrimental, like cancer or whatever. I think they pretty much treated it like everybody else treats me, to be quite honest, with this condition. It's like they go, okay, we have to find out what it is, but you just sit down. You're fine when you sit down, right? Okay, yeah, so we can wait maybe like 2 months or so. Okay, you know what I mean? So there wasn't like a huge sense of urgency, not one that I was feeling for sure, because of course I was one with the discomfort. So I think that they were trying to be supportive, particularly my mother especially, but they really wasn't like a huge sense of urgency because I was still moving like everybody else was.
Yeah.
I was still running technically. This whole thing on being reduced, right?
Okay.
Yeah, like it I feel like it's just been like a prevalent thing in various aspects of my life. So and with this as well, like I just felt like I personally wasn't being heard. So I don't know what they were going through, because again, we've never really discussed this, but I just never felt like I was being heard or tended to as urgently as I would have liked to on various fronts, parents, doctors, the world.
So if Bahumi now 30 can go back to Bahumi at 14 and help her walk through that year, knowing only at the end of the year you find out what it is. Yeah. What are you doing? How are you helping your younger self through this process? And what would you do? Well, I guess how would you do it differently?
I wouldn't invalidate her pain when she says she's in pain. I would hear her out. I would try to, I don't know, like just walk her through the process as best as possible. So if one avenue doesn't work, I'd probably be one of those like really paranoid, maybe caregivers or whatever, just like not sleeping at night trying to figure out what this is.
Like relentless.
Yeah, because to be quite honest, like that's who she was. Of course, she didn't have we didn't have the internet as we have it now. But I remember I would constantly go to the library and find out and there was nothing because again, what do I type? Right, just type big leg and then I'd get a different condition or whatever, but what they described was not what I would see here. And so I get, of course I can imagine it being a tough journey, but I think I would just try my best to just sit with her and tell her that I'm here for her and
she's not in this by herself.
Yeah, and that she's not in this by herself, and that even when I can't find a solution, just to reassure her that I haven't pushed it under the rug, that it's still something that I'm
Top priority.
top priority. So, yeah.
Look, lymphedema is obviously a very difficult one. With you, so there's something I actually don't know. So I would like to know, does it tend to only manifest in your legs? Or does it manifest in other areas of the body as well?
With other people, so for me,
So
it's
it
just pretty much,
depends. So it depends on, okay,
it depends. But
that's
it's
tough.
predominantly the leg and the arms.
Okay. The legs I can understand. This is unrelated to lymphedema in general, but if I think about someone who has diabetes, the first place where untreated diabetes manifests is in the legs as well. So the reason that, like in diabetes, if it goes untreated, why it manifests in your legs first is because your body protects the essentials first, the brain, like the upper body. And so the first time you start feeling tingling in your foot is because that's where your nerves are starting to go to die, because that's where it's letting it happen. Yeah. I am by no means a doctor and I've explained this clinically, but practically that's what happens. And I don't know whether this is the same thing with lymphedema and why one feels it in the legs first. Yeah. Given that lymphedema is something that, first of all, it has the ability to incapacitate you to an extent, but also manifests visually. Yeah. If I think about actors, musicians, some of them have asthma, depression, anything that's inside the body, it's internal. It's not something that's being visually displayed to the public. How has that impacted your acting career?
I mean, thank God it hasn't really stopped me from pursuing, whatever role. And my agent and I have pretty much taken the avenue that, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. And thankfully, I've never been rejected or dismissed because of the condition. However, I personally, especially once I've gotten the role, I personally can't help but think that it's something that's in the back of people's minds. And the only thing that the part that it affects is, just the logistical side of things. Like, okay, so are we going to be covering it? Are we going to,
Like the equivalent is like someone falls pregnant in the movie
yeah,
and like they now don't have her standing, or they put a pillow in front of her, she wears a big jacket.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, stuff like that. There was a role that I got, and I mean, firstly, just this role, this entire production itself was just, I don't even know why I decided to continue on in this production, but they didn't really treat it with the sensitivity that I would have hoped they did. I think for them it was just a matter of, okay, well, we're sticking to what we said we're going to, and I don't blame them, maybe from a planning perspective, but it wasn't things that we couldn't work around because we've done it many a times. But there was a time where, they were like, okay, she's going to wear a skirt because you say she's going to wear a skirt. And I remember saying to them, okay, but just in terms of like narrative, does this character, this is not even part of the character story. Unless you're gonna, because people are gonna all of a sudden start asking questions, and it's gonna take away from, because Bahumi is the one who's dealing with lymphedema, not this character. So do you really want that to happen? And yeah, the director was just very dismissive, like, yeah, he's just very dismissive about it. And lo and behold, they recorded it that way. I felt very, very insecure doing it. And again, I think I would have been fine with it if I knew that if it fit the character story.
yeah. And also, hold on, and you chose that role, right? Because that role wasn't chosen that way.
Yeah.
Before they made the decision.
Yeah.
Were you at that point already open about the situation, or were you still very much trying to keep it under wraps?
I was open, but I didn't want people to find out that way. So I was open about it in my immediate space, or if you meet me, I wouldn't try to hide it.
Yeah.
But it wasn't something that I'd publicized. And so if I'm at the last place that I would want to publicize it is in a role where I want people to see my acting capabilities or, my performance, and all people are concentrating on is this girl's big leg, as they would say,
Yeah, it's not very empowering.
No,
it's a very.
That's the perfect way to put it. I felt really, really small. Yeah, I felt reduced again.
Oh, it's evident.
That. Yeah, I felt reduced again. I felt like my craft is just belittled. Again, people were not seeing me or what I could do. They were just mocking, like on Twitter, they were just mocking the fact that this actor or this person now has, like, a random big leg, and that's how they would put it. Like, they don't, you know what I mean? So people are very insensitive to things like that. So I would have liked at least to treat it with the sensitivity that it required, and I felt like I was robbed of that in that moment.
When I talk to you, I kind of get that might be a common theme where in your life, actually, it's a common theme for your life where you never had the option to make the decision yourself. Yeah, it wasn't your decision. This is obviously more of a conversation for the next podcast that we're gonna do, but it's not you. It wasn't your decision to be born to famous parents. It wasn't your decision, for this to be the way that we make it publicly aware. How do you now kind of reconcile that? Have you now set new boundaries going forward? Is that something you're trying to work on at the moment? How do you actually set boundaries in a space like this?
So I set clear boundaries and I set clear standards for myself. I mean, if you want to go deeper into it in the next part, sure. But just briefly, it's part of why I restarted my, I want to say, entire life on social media. I felt as though, my previous life or how I was before on social media was very much foundationed on everybody else's perspectives, expectations. Many people followed me because of who my parents were. Many people followed me because of the life I seemed to portray as well. I didn't have much direction as well. I think I was just going with the wind.
When you say no direction, who did you expect to give you direction?
It's a good one. Thanks, Sensei. Well, that's a good question. See, I never asked myself that at the time. I think it wasn't so much even even asking myself who did I expect to give me direction, but I guess I was hoping that I'll find the direction along the way. Just play whatever cards and then, see where they lead me, see that the stars align.
Were your parents the first gen, like I say, first generation famous? Like, were they the first people so the people you have before that is famous as well? Because I mean, for us people that are not famous, is there no DIY toolkit that they can help you follow to maybe give you some direction?
No, I would have liked that.
Because it would make sense that the people that come before you that have this would kind of help you there.
No, they didn't want me to be famous to begin with.
But I mean, it was inevitable. Like,
Yeah.
how can you not when you broadcast the wedding, or I mean, funny. The funniest thing about you, right? This is the funniest thing about you is that when we started working together, I knew nothing about you.
I know.
Yeah. And even researching for this, I'm still like, what is all this? She's crazy. And then I'm on Showmax. I'm like, what? Okay. All right. So like, clearly I live under a rock is what I'm learning. But
Stay there.
yeah. So I'm like, I didn't even know where I was going with this.
Was there no roadmap? I think.
Oh yeah, there's no roadmap. Yeah. So I'm like thinking, like, surely, if it's tough for me to think that, okay, they didn't want you to be famous if your entire structure is set up for that.
Yeah.
And I mean, okay, do you want to be famous? Why are they filming at the house? Why are they having a podcast at wedding? If they you want to keep the family out of it. I think about Ryan Gosling and Eva Mendes, who moved to Canada. So I have no idea what their children do or whatever it is, but they completely removed themselves from the spotlight. It's a huge difference,
It's so interesting that you mentioned them because I remember I kept asking myself, I know Eva Mendes, I know Ryan, but I don't know anything about them, and I wonder why. But I remember I kept on saying to myself, I would love that.
Yeah.
And then you're telling me this. Yeah. So well, they didn't really give me a blueprint or a map of some kind. Look, I don't say this to be crass or to disrespect my parents in any way. But I think we have 3 generations of fame, me being the third in my family. But they're each so different that it's pretty tough to guide the next. So with my grandparents, for example, they were famous around the apartheid era, and then maybe post after that, post that for a moment. There wasn't social media. There wasn't maybe like a lot of, well, we don't have much paparazzi here, but like tabloids and all those.
Yes.
So they wouldn't even be able to even guide my dad, for example.
Where that is the new thing.
Yeah, where that now is the new thing. And then with my parents, I definitely think that they could have played a bigger role in guiding me, especially since our generations or everything has moved faster.
Yeah.
But I also think You know, as an artist, it's very difficult to not be, again, I say this very carefully, but like, I think as an artist, it's very difficult for you to not be so, I guess, consumed in your own piece of work or your own craft because you're out here trying to uh build or grow the reputation or whatever. And I think I like to believe that that was, you know, the case with my parents. And I think it worked for them and to their detriment. And I think it definitely worked for them in the sense that you know, because again, they just are consuming what they're doing, that they got the success that they did. But and this is nothing uncommon. A lot of public figures are often so much, you know, they're so focused in the work.
They're very one-dimensional.
Yeah.
And I think a key...
They don't really recognize how it affects
The rest.
those around them.
Yeah, and a proponent of success is being one-dimensional. So, you know, there's obviously in the film industry is different, or in acting or in fame. I want to bucket the word fame because the difference is that, okay, well, now we see the impact of what it's like to be one-dimensional on what happens around you. It's different with people that are, I think about business leaders, you know, Steve Jobs is maybe an example, where he was so one-dimensional with work. But it's only after he died that we found out how bad his relationships were, you know, and how his family suffered. And like, yeah, but it was his being so one-dimensional and so invested in in his project is what helped Apple become what it was.
Yeah.
Now, it's a double-edged sword. But you know, being put in the spotlight, to us eating that meal of whatever's going on in your guys' lives, you know, it's different. It's different than someone who's in business, for example, or an athlete where you don't actually know what's going on in their private lives.
Yeah.
But I think the part that I want to get to with this, with your life with lymphedema, and especially you spoke about how you have changed. I don't want to say your identity, but I want to say that you've not, because I'd say rebranding yourself, it takes away from like the weight of how you're now moving into a more faith-based Bahumi. Yeah, this is you. This is who I am. How would you say faith has played a role in you dealing and living with lymphedema?
To say it's played a role is reducing faith in itself. I think I'm gonna sound corny and say that it is the role. um it You mentioned identity there, and I strongly believe that faith isn't something that we should segment or, you know, something that we should compartmentalize. Because once faith, whether it's religious or not, faith is believing in something with a strong conviction, whether you've seen it manifest or not, right? And I think that belief is who you are. I don't think that belief is a part of you. And that's why I don't understand when people, for example, would say that they believe something, but they do something completely different. Your belief is who you are. You manifest as your belief. And so for me, as soon as I established my faith and understood what my faith meant for me, was the very beginning of me understanding who I am. I have a strong belief in my God. I have a strong belief in my faith. And it's because of that things like the lymphedema, the parents, the fame, etc., don't really inform my identity. You know, they're a part of it. I don't want to pretend, you know, like they're not there and then, you know, just trivialize them, you know. But my faith or my belief informs how I approach those things, or how I react to those things, or rather how I respond to those things. They don't shape what I do anymore. And I think that's why I'm able to not hide the lymphedema anymore. Now, I'm not, again, an ode to not making lymphedema become my identity. I'm not out here saying, oh, I'm a lymphedema advocate or whatever, because I think that's another way of, because people will think that in so doing, they are now living in their true identity. And, you know, and I'm not, again, no shade to people who do advocate for things like that. But I think for me, when I started to really understand my faith and understand why I choose to believe the things that I believe, it really shaped how I receive good and bad news and receive hate and love. I appreciate the love for what it is, but I don't embody it as my identity. And I analyze the hate for whatever it is, and I decide what to take and what not to take from it. Same with the conditions, you know.
So why don't you give me some more specific some specific faith principles that you've kind of learned from, or that you lean on, if it's verses. I'd like to get something a lot more concrete that we can, if you have people listening in and they were looking for inspiration, that they can say, this was something that really helped Bahumi. Maybe this can help me as well. You know, do you have anything like that? If you don't have it, it's also fine. Just wondering if you had something a bit more, like principle based, something that you lean on. Because when you say, I don't let negative comments affect me, what in your faith is helping you do that? You know, what principle in your faith are you leaning on that helps you do that?
Yeah, Jesus. And see, the thing is, I'm always so careful, even though I know it probably shouldn't be, but I'm also careful when I say that, because believers in a God, or I want to say whatever form of deity, no matter what people believe in, but often they reduce certain people or who they believe in to just a very corny, simplified statement, right? But for me, when I say that in the sense of knowing for me that He is God, and that this God who loves me so much that He risked His life is even so. It's again very reductive. I feel like I keep using that word, right? But He literally died for me because He loves me and He cares for me. And this person is God. So if literally the God of the universe or the multiverse literally risked His life, and I say that I believe that, if I truly believe that, then nothing else will truly matter. And I think that's what I rest on. It's, of course, I'm a human being and I live in this, very fickle world and I feel things, but that's my true north. That's literally, again, because I say that I believe that. If I didn't believe that, then it's just a bumper sticker that I put on my car, But because I believe that, then I'm like, okay, then it informs every other thing that I do. And that's why I don't give a hoot's ass, sorry, Jesus, about, about what people say or people think, the lymphedema, etc. It's there. I'm not, again, minimizing it, but it doesn't play as big of a role as it did because I believe in what I believe in.
And prepping for this conversation, and I kind of want to leave it there, but leave it with a good takeaway, is I think there was a certain verse in the Bible that I think resonated a lot with you when I was reading it. I'm like, man, when I read this, I think a lot about Bahumi here. And it was the whole idea that, and it's in Corinthians, if you want to find the exact verse, but principally it means, what it says is that weakness isn't a failure, it's where grace flows. So it's the idea of living in that, if you want to say vulnerability, that's where the magic happens. And when I think about your story, especially lymphedema being a chapter, not the story, this is another one of those examples where I could see that play out. But I really appreciate you being on this podcast and talking about it today. I know we touched on it. Hope you didn't get too deep.
No, we didn't. I'm glad you asked the things that you asked. I think just for me, for my own sake. You gave me a lot to introspect about, and as much as you don't think that you went deep, or you don't go deep enough, I think you've definitely started a conversation within me. And I hope that you get to do that with other people as well.
Nice. Nice.